Here are two 27-inch monitors, same size, same price, sitting right next to each other, and one looks stunning while the other looks washed out and blurry. The whole difference is hidden in the spec sheet, that wall of numbers and letters most people scroll straight past. By the end of this video, you'll read it like a menu and spot the one spec on it that's basically a lie. Size and aspect ratio. Because underneath all the jargon, a monitor is really answering just three questions: how sharp the picture is, how fast it moves, and how good the colors look. Every spec fits into one of those. Let's start with the simplest: size. Monitors are measured diagonally, corner to corner, in inches, 24, 27, 32, and up. But size ties into shape. Most screens are 16:9, the classic widescreen rectangle. Then there's ultra-wide, 21:9, like someone grabbed your screen and stretched it sideways. Great for spreading out work or getting lost in a game. And super ultra-wide, 32:9, which is basically two monitors fused into one giant wall. There's even a hot new in-between called 5K 2K showing up in 2025. Here's the catch though. A bigger screen with the same detail can actually look worse. Which brings us to the spec that really decides sharpness, and it's not the one you'd guess. Resolution and pixel density. Resolution is the number of tiny dots, pixels, that build the image. 1080p, 1440p, 4K, more pixels, more detail. Simple. Except here's what nobody tells you. Sharpness isn't about resolution alone. It's resolution spread across size. That's pixel density, measured in pixels per inch. Pack 4K into a 27-inch screen and it's razor sharp, around 163 pixels per inch. Stretch that exact same 4K across a 55-inch TV and the pixels turn big and chunky. So a 27-inch 1440p can look every bit as crisp as a 32-inch 4K because the dots sit closer together. The takeaway: don't just chase the word 4K. Match the resolution to the size. For a 24-inch, 1080p is plenty. At 27, 140/40p is the sweet spot. At 32 and above, you want 4K. One heads up though, the more pixels you push, the harder your graphics card has to work to fill them. 4K leans especially hard on its video memory, its VRAM. If that side's new to you, I made a whole every GPU VRAM size explained video on exactly how much you need. But sharpness and size are really just the frame. What decides whether a screen looks jaw-dropping or flat is the technology inside it. And that's the single most important spec on the whole sheet. Panel type. This is the single most important spec on the sheet, and the one buying guides breeze right past. The panel is the actual screen technology, and it comes in a few families. TN is the old, cheap one, lightning fast, but the colors look faded, and tilt your head an inch and they shift like a mood ring. For most people, it's faded out of the mainstream, so you can skip it. With one exception, at the absolute bleeding edge of esports, the fastest screens on Earth, like the 540Hz monsters, are still TN, because a pro just wants raw speed. For everyone else, move on. IPS is the all-rounder. Lovely colors, wide angles, the safe default for most people. VA sits in between, with deeper blacks but slower motion. And then there's OLED, the showstopper. Instead of one backlight, every pixel makes its own light. So black is truly black, motion is near instant, and colors leap off the screen. OLED comes in two flavors: WOLED, with sharper text for desk work, and QD OLED, with punchier color. The downside? It costs more, and over years, static logos can leave faint burn-in. The LCD comeback to OLED is mini LED. Thousands of tiny backlights that get blindingly bright, past 2000 nits, with zero burn-in risk. Burn this in. Pick your panel first. It decides most of how a screen feels. Everything else is just fine-tuning. And speaking of the screen itself, there's one more call to make about its shape. Should it stay flat or bend around you? Curved versus flat. Quick one. Some monitors bend toward you, and the curve gets a rating like 1800R or 800R. The smaller the number, the deeper the curve. On a normal 16:9 screen, it's mostly for looks. But on a wide or ultra-wide monitor, a curve genuinely helps. It wraps the far edges toward your eyes, so they sit the same distance away as the center. Easier on the eyes, more immersive. Rule of thumb: flat is fine for small and medium screens, and the wider you go, the more a curve earns its keep. Now, the motion half of the story, starting with the number gamers lose their minds over. Refresh rate. Refresh rate, in hertz, is how many times per second the screen redraws itself. 60 hertz was the standard forever, but 120, 144, 240 and beyond make everything, even just dragging a window around, look liquid smooth, and in fast games, it's a real edge. The top end is wild now. 360, 480, even a 500 Hz plus screen exists. There are dual mode monitors that flip between crisp 4K at 240 Hz and blistering 1080p at 480 Hz on command. But two honest catches. One, your graphics card has to actually produce those frames. Feed a 240 Hz screen only 60 frames, and you see 60. Two, past roughly 240, unless you've got the eyes of a fighter pilot, most people genuinely can't feel the difference. So don't overpay for hertz you can't use. And a high refresh rate on its own won't stop the screen from smearing. That's a whole different spec. Response time. Response time is how fast each pixel can change color. In milliseconds, lower is better. Get it wrong, and fast motion drags a smeary ghost behind it. Here's the trap. Makers love printing 1 milliseconds, but there are two ways to measure it, GTG and MPRT, and honestly, neither number on the box is fully trustworthy. That 1 millisecond GTG is a best case. To hit it, the screen cranks a boost called overdrive, so hard it can actually paint a glowing halo around moving objects, a ghost of its own. And 1 millisecond MPRT is usually pulled off by strobing the backlight, which dims the screen and isn't even on by default. So don't buy off the sticker. OLED sidesteps the whole fight at about 0.03 milliseconds, basically instant. For everything else, the honest move is 30 seconds on a review site like Artings, which films the real motion for you. But even a fast panel can rip the image in half, and fixing that is its own spec. Adaptive sync. When your graphics card and monitor fall out of step, you get screen tearing. The picture looks split, like the top and bottom don't line up. Adaptive sync fixes it by letting the monitor match its refresh rate to your card's frame rate on the fly. You'll spot three names: NVIDIA's G-Sync, AMD's FreeSync, and the OpenVesa Adaptive Sync. Notice two of those are graphics card brands. This whole feature lives right on the handshake between your monitor and your GPU. If that GPU side is a bit of a black box, my Every GPU Feature Explained video breaks down what every part of it does. The good news in 2026, most of them now play nicely with most cards, and FreeSync comes free on a ton of monitors, so it's less a thing to agonize over and more a box you want ticked. Alright, the picture's sharp, and it's smooth. Now for the part of the sheet with the most marketing fibs on it, how good it actually looks. Brightness and HDR. Brightness is measured in nits, and it powers HDR, the feature that lets bright things blaze while dark things stay inky, all in the same image. Done right, HDR is jaw-dropping. Here's that lie I promised. You'll see a badge that says HDR 400. It sounds official, it's even a real VESA standard, but it's HDR in name only. The screen isn't bright or controlled enough to actually pull off the effect. It just barely qualifies on paper. Real HDR needs either an OLED or a mini LED with lots of dimming zones. Think HDR 600, HDR 1000, or OLED's True Black badge. So when a cheap monitor brags about HDR, check the number. Under 600, treat it as a small bonus, not a feature. Above it, now we're talking. Speaking of getting color right, how do you actually read the color specs? Color. Two numbers matter here, mostly if you make things for a living. First, color gamut, the range of colors the screen can show. sRGB is the standard everything targets. DCI-P3 is the wider, richer range you want for photo and video. 100% sRGB just means it shows every color it's meant to, accurately. Second, bit depth, 8-bit versus 10-bit, which is how smoothly colors blend. 10-bit erases those ugly bands you sometimes see across a sunset. For gaming or office work, don't lose sleep over this. But if you edit photos or video, look for high sRGB or P3 coverage and 10-bit color, or your work won't look right on anyone else's screen. Right, the display itself is handled. Now, how do you even plug it in without throwing away everything you just paid for? Ports. The ports on the back decide whether your monitor can even hit its own specs. HDMI 2.1 and DisplayPort 2.1 are the current high-speed connectors, and they matter because a big signal, say 4K at 240 Hz, needs a lot of bandwidth. Now there's a clever rescue here called DSC, Display Stream Compression. It squeezes that huge signal down with no difference your eyes can catch. So even a slightly older port like DisplayPort 1.4 can often push 4K 240 just fine. Where it bites you is the truly extreme stuff, or a cheap cable that can't keep up. That's when you quietly lose refresh rate you paid for. DisplayPort 2.1 has the most headroom, built for those big numbers without breaking a sweat. Then there's USB-C, the quiet hero. On many monitors, a single USB-C cable carries the video and charges your laptop at once. One cable for your whole desk. So before you buy, match the port to the specs you're paying for. And if these connectors all blur together, which does what? Which is fastest? I broke down every single one in my computer. Every computer port explained in 10 minutes video. There's just one strip of the sheet left, the part nobody reads until it starts to annoy them. The fine print. These are the specs that don't sell monitors, but decide whether you'll enjoy living with one. Panel coating. Matte kills glare, but slightly softens the image, while glossy looks punchy, but turns into a mirror in a bright room. The stand. Can it raise, tilt, or swivel? Or are you propping it up on a stack of books? A built-in KVM lets one keyboard and mouse run two computers. And burn-in cover, good OLEDs now ship with a few years of warranty against it. None of this is glamorous, but it's the stuff you feel every single day. Okay, you can now read the whole sheet, top to bottom. Time to put it together. Which monitor is actually right for you? The cheat sheet. Screenshot time. Here's the entire spec sheet, boiled down to what you actually do. Competitive gamer, chase refresh rate, and real motion clarity. 1440p, 240 Hz or more, a fast IPS or an OLED, or a blazing TN if you live at the 500 Hz plus extreme. Story and single-player games? Chase the picture instead. A 4K OLED with real HDR and dual mode if you can afford it. Office and coding? A 1440p or 4K IPS with a USB-C cable so one plug does everything, plus a stand that tilts. Photo or video editor? Chase color, high sRGB or P3, 10-bit, on an IPS or QD-OLED. On a budget, a 1440p 144 Hz IPS is the sweet spot of 2026, and it'll make almost anyone happy. And the specs to just ignore: HDR 400, MP response times, invented contrast numbers, plus any refresh rate higher than your graphics card can actually feed. That's the whole spec sheet, decoded. Sharp, fast, colorful, with no marketing tricks left to fool you. If this made monitor shopping less scary, a like really helps the channel. And tell me down in the comments, what panel type is the screen you're watching this on right now? See you in the next one.